and I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, about who I am, and we're going to talk about identity, which is something that kind of like consume, hours of my life I consume about understanding who I am. And it is kind of hard to just, I'm almost 50 and I'm still thinking about who I am. And that is kind of hard, but it's also beautiful, right? It's also beautiful to say like, I'm almost 50 and I'm still seeing how I'm going to redefine myself and how I see myself deeply inside and how I'm gonna project that for people to see, from the outside. So I'm very happy to be having this talk and to talk a little bit about me. I did this, my media person did this video. Oh, good thing I don't have any porn open here. That would be really embarrassing. Um, and I was going to, oh, here it is. I'm gonna share a video that they did for my presentation. I'm so proud of this. I thought like this was, can you see it?
And we're rolling. Wait, is it gonna be a drum roll or something? No. Ooh. Cut. Hi, my name is Cecilia Gentili. When it comes to identity, it is many things that I can say about myself.
I was told that you could help us clean up a little mess. For a friend of ours. Never.
I can say that I am a woman who happens to be trans. I am someone's partner. I am an immigrant and I lived in this country undocumented for 10 years until I finally got my status. I am a former sex worker, an addict in recovery. I am someone who spent time at Rikers. I create and love. I am a badass businesswoman and an eternal optimist. Well, you must be an optimist with all the things that I just mentioned in your identity, right? Trans rights are my passion. And I believe that we all have an opportunity to do better. Until every trans woman in the world is seen, treated, and respected as a woman, we are not done.
Your rainbow doesn't do shit if you're not doing what you need to do for sex workers. Sex work is work. Sex work is work. Sex work is work.
Cute, right? Yeah.
And things that I can say about myself.
Cute. I really love it. I really love it. It just made me, I thought like, the person that did this kind of like capture pretty much who I am and, all are, the things that form my identity. So when we talk about identity and when I talk about my identity, it's certain things that come to mind. The most important, in the order that I used it there, the most important thing that I understand as part of my identity is that I identify as a woman, right? And everything that comes with being a woman and navigating the world, which sometimes can be pretty shitty. But it is what it is, so that it would be my first identity. I also identify as a trans person and who happens to be a woman, or a woman who happens to be a trans person. I always have that kind of question, like in I am trying to identify what I'm first, if I am a woman who happens to be trans, or I am a trans person who is a woman. And I've been thinking a lot about that because those things live together and they are such an important part of my identity. And I never know what's first. I never know what's more important. I never know what takes more space in my identity, if my womanhood or my transness, though, So I think a lot about that. I think a lot about that. And I'm still thinking like, what goes first? So for now, I said that, that my identity is part of being a woman who happens to be trans, right? So I'm gonna, and other parts of my identity are the fact that, I am a sex worker. I am a person who worked in the sex trade for many, many years. And that has shaped my identity in a way that is like really, really remarkable, right? Another thing that is important in my identity is the fact that I am an immigrant, right? I was born in Argentina and I migrated to the United States. And the identity of being an immigrant, of being a person that lives in the country that is new for them, and the identity of a person who lives away from family and from everything that pretty much form your identity until a certain point, because part of my identity is being Argentinian, but I don't live in Argentina anymore. So that those two identities live together, right? I'm an Argentinian, but I'm an immigrant that doesn't live in Argentina. And how those two things can live together, it's always been very interesting to me. So what did I say? Woman, trans, sex worker, immigrant, Argentinian. I am also a person in recovery. And that my idea of recovery may not be the idea that everybody has about recovery. I just don't do specific drugs, but I do some other drugs. It's complicated. It's complicated. The drugs that got me in trouble, I don't do anymore. But sometimes I do some other drugs that are less harmful for me. So I like to say that I'm in recovery. Some people that are in recovery are like, you're not in recovery. Bitch, you are not in recovery. I'm like, I am in recovery. I stopped shooting heroin, I don't smoke crack anymore. But they're like, but you pop Xanax all the time. You're always drinking. So I'm like, yeah, but I don't think that's a problem for me. So I think I'm in recovery. Many people question that, and that's fine. The beauty about identity is that you can own it. Whatever you want, you can own it. So I say that I'm in fucking recovery. I'm in fucking recovery. And who's gonna tell me shit? Nobody, because I do my own identity and I create my own identity. So I, as I said, woman, a trans person, an immigrant, Argentinian, sex worker, immigrant. Another thing that has formed an incredible part of my identity is that I'm a person who had spent time in Rikers Island, which is a jail system here in New York City. And that has, become part of my identity in a way that that is very important to me. And if you go to it, all those things can go together, because like I am a person who used extreme amount of drugs for many, many years, and because I am a sex worker, and because those things are criminalized, sometimes part of your identity create other identities, right? Because I am not a person who spent time in jail naturally, right? That came because of the criminality of using drugs or being in the sex trade. So sometimes identities create specific specific realities that become also part of your identity. Am I losing you all? Are we good up to now? No? Okay, good. And sorry, I don't have like a strong accent, but I guess that you all may have different accents too, right? Because you all are in different parts of the world, you are from different parts. How cool, how cool. So if you have a problem with my accent, deal with it, bitches. I can't do anything about it. So let's talk a little bit about who I am in terms of identity. As I said, I identify as a woman, but that was a discovery. And for many, many years, I thought that I was something else. So I'm gonna show you a little video again. Look at me managing all kind of technology and shit. Yes, I feel like,
the life expectancy of a trans woman of color. I actually think it's like a trans person, but as I identify as a trans woman of color, I like to say that the life expectancy of a trans woman of color is in between 32 and 35 years old. So I am 44, so I already stole like 9 years from life. And that's why I identify as a transgender elder. And I am totally proud and okay with being calling myself an elder. I don't remember exactly if it was kindergarten or it was the first grade, but around that time, it seems like I was going to the girls' bathroom all the time, and somebody noticed that. So one day, I needed to pee, and I went to the bathroom, and the girls didn't say anything really, but it was like a teacher's thing. So my teacher followed me when I went to the bathroom, and she went after me to the bathroom and grabbed me out of the bathroom and said, "No, you can't come to this bathroom. You have to go to the boys' bathroom." And I didn't understand. I thought like she was crazy. I was like, why is she saying this? Right? So the day after, when I got to school, I went to my classroom and they told me not to go to class, to go to the principal's office. I got into a room that was mostly wood and with libraries on the side. And there was the principal, and next to him, it was my teacher, and next to him, it was my mom, and next to them, it was what I learned after that they were a psychologist and a psychiatrist. They explained to me that I was using the girls' bathroom, and that wasn't right, that I wasn't supposed to do that. And I said, like, why? So they started like opening these pictures of like human bodies, and like then all the pictures of like closer to what it was like a penis, and another one where it was a vagina, and they explained to me that boys have penises and girls have vaginas, and they asked me what I had, and I said, well, it looks closer to that one. And they said, yeah, that is a penis, and that makes you a boy, and that's why you have to go to the boys' bathroom. And they go like, but I don't think that's right. And they go like, it doesn't matter what you think. You have a penis, you go to the boys' bathroom. And it was shocking to me, like I didn't understand what was going on. And it was an understanding of like, it's all these rules that I had to follow. And I said, okay, that's what you need me to do. I will use the boys' bathroom. So from that point on, I started going to the boys' bathroom, restroom. The thing is, like, as I was very feminine, all the boys used to taunt me and to make fun of me. And the restroom is the place to do all those things, right? It was fun and funny to go to the boys' bathroom, knowing that it wasn't right and it was awful at the same time. But It just happened.
Yeah, that was I think like that was the first time that I learned to negotiate with the rest of the world, right? And sometimes like our identities are not are not identities that are recognized by the rest of the world. And in my case, like I knew what my identity was, but nobody else did. So it was just my thing, and I had to leave that identity in my own and like as a secret, and in negotiating with life in order to survive, right? In my head, it was like, I know who I am. They don't. They have power over me, and they make the rules, and I have to continue going. So I have to play by their rules. But I always knew that I knew who I was, and I wasn't who they thought I was. So kudos to me, right? Because not everybody can do that. Like, no, a lot of people are not able to just really grasp into who they really are for a long time, and they live terrible lives. I'm not saying that I had a wonderful life. It was a lot. It was a terribleness about that. It is a really funny second part to that story. And going to the boys' bathroom was just one of the things that I had to do. Plus, in between us, sometimes I had some fun in boys' bathrooms. It wasn't all that terrible. But see, Jonathan knows what I'm talking about. He's laughing. Ah! So I am from a really small town in Argentina that is known for a lot of UFO activities. Plus, I think it was a thing of the 70s. I know you all cannot believe it that I'm even from the 70s because I look so young. By the way, what happened in fucking 6 years? In that video, I look so fresh. Maybe I should go back like brunette. I don't know. Or just age though. I'm just old. I don't know. I was looking at that video, I'm like, oh shit, I was really hot and fresh at that time. And now I look like shit. I may just go to brunette, back to brunette, whatever. So I am from the 70s, and I know I want to see some faces of surprise. So I'm going to say that again. I am from the 70s, and I know people can't believe it. People can ever believe. I know. I see you all super surprised, and it happens all the time. Just it is what it is. So I think it was some kind of, in the 70s, it was some kind of fascination with UFOs in Argentina. And I am from an area that was known for a lot of UFO activities. So I remember, like, we would just, go in our bicycles, looking in the countryside, looking for signs of UFOs. And we said, like, look, we'll find these things. And we said, like, maybe a UFO was here last night. And it was such a like fun thing to do, right? And it was genderless. Anybody, boys and girls would do it. So that was something that I would do all the time, and it was fun. At the same time that thing happened, when they told me that I couldn't use the girls' bathroom because I was a boy, and I deep inside, I knew that I wasn't. One time we were going to my grandma's house, and my grandma was one of the most supportive people in my life, always, from a very, very early age. So we were going to my grandma, and it was my father driving, and me next, and my mom next to him, and in the back it was my brother and me. And we were crossing a railroad. And when we crossed the railroad, my brother elbowed me, and he says, like, I have something to tell you. And I said, like, why are we whispering? And he's like, because mom cannot know about this. And I'm like, what happened? And he said, did you see that railroad? And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, that's where we found you 5 years ago. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you're not part of our family. We found you in the fucking railroad. And I'm like, no. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, was I in a basket? And he's like, no, no basket. He's like, was I like wrapped in a blankie? He's like, no, no blankie, just naked there in the railroad. And I started crying and crying and crying. He's like, don't cry, because you can't tell mom. Mom cannot know that you know now. But I think I had to tell you this. You deserve to know that we found you in the railroad. And you know, my brother was always a terrible person and a horrible brother, but I still love him. So I was crying until we got to my grandma's house. And when we got to my grandma's house, I said like, grandma, I know. And my grandma says like, what? What do you know? I said, I know. You don't have to fake it anymore. I know. And she's like, what is it that you know? And I said, I learned that I was found in the railroad and I am a girl with a pee-pee and all these UFOs around us. I know they left me by mistake. They left me by mistake in the railroad. And my grandmother, being the amazing woman that she was, looked at me and said, most likely, that makes sense. That makes sense. And she said something that it was very important for me and that I use all the time. And it's like, what you gonna do about it? You know, because we have this information, you know, that you may be a UFO left by mistake in the railroad. What do you wanna do? What are you gonna do with it? And I said, I wanna wait. I wanna wait tonight and see if they come for me. And we're gonna channel our energy and, you know, so they will see me and they will come back for me. And my grandma was like, but I'm gonna lose you. If they come back for you, I'm gonna lose you and I want you in my life. And I was like, I know, grandma, but I need to live in this planet where all the girls have pee-pee like me because I'm the only girl with a pee-pee. And my grandma was like, okay, if that's what it is, if you're gonna be happy in this other planet, I'll wait for you. So she made cookies and milk, and we sat under a tangerine tree and we waited talking and singing, and we waited and we fell asleep sitting there. And we woke up very early in the morning and it was cold. So she said, let's go inside. She says, like, it seems like it's too late. They're not gonna come anymore. And she said, like, you know, UFOs are very busy. You know, sometimes, like, you know, they may not have time to come and get you. And I said, like, but I feel like they don't want me. And she's like, well, but I do, and we all do. And you are part of this family. And even if you are a UFO, now you're with us. And, you know, we are the only thing you have. So you're going to have to learn to live with us as we're learning to live with you. And I love you. And she told me, someday you will make it to that planet. And I feel like I lived all my life looking for the planet, which is like pretty much looking for my identity and looking for who I am and looking for people like me where I can feel at home. Because I think like sometimes it is really important to know who we are in terms of identity, but it's really, really important to be able to surround yourself with people that you share that identity with. And that was not my case, you know, it was the 70s. You didn't learn it. Faces of surprise. Again, I'm gonna go again. It was the 70s. I know, you guys. Stop being surprised. So it was Argentina in the 70s. It was a fucking dictatorship, you know? People were like, you know, dying for being different. You know, people, you know, the Argentinian dictatorship of the 70s was one of the worst. You know, many of my family members disappeared because my father was very into politics. You know, even my father, you know, didn't see me until I was like 2 years old because he had to be like hiding. So, you know, it was a difficult moment. It was no internet, you know, it was no conversation about transness. You know, I feel like being trans is a difficult reality, but, you know, at least like children that identify as trans nowadays, they can go online, they can learn about it, they can find groups, they can talk to their teachers. I could not do any of that shit because of all those things, because it was like taboo, because it was not talked about, because it was you know, a dictatorship and all of those things. So I had to really leave my identity as a secret, and that is a very complicated way of living, you know, when you have to live a reality that you and only you know about it. It's a very difficult, complicated reality. So so that's who I that was my first time that I learned about my identity, and it was also the first part of my identity that I couldn't share with anybody. Now, you know, I met the first trans person in my life when I was 17. And before, you know, when I was around 12 years old, um, I met another gay person, a gay person, right? And I thought like, this is not who I am, but it's kind of close. You know, this gay boy was very feminine. And I was like, maybe I'm gay, right? Maybe I'm not the only one. But deep inside, I knew that I wasn't like him. He was a gay man. And I never identify as a man, but it was kind of close. And it was the only person that I could be, you know, feminine and flamboyant and all of that. And I came out as gay, and I told my mom that I was gay. She had a fit and almost like flipped out and got like really angry, and then, you know, dealt with it, and it was okay. But I always felt like that was not my identity, that I was living, trying to negotiate with life, and I found something that was kind of close to how I felt. But I always knew that I wasn't a gay boy. When I was 17, I left the small town that I'm from, and I went to college, and I discovered college, and I discovered nightlife in the big city, and the gay bars and the transsexuals. So when I met the first trans person, I don't know, I'm just trying to find the same. I don't think I got to experience the same feeling ever again. It's like when I don't know if it's a part of any of you that you never knew someone else is like you know, it was the first time that I knew that someone else was like me. And it was 17 years of not knowing someone like me. And that is a very long time. That's a very long time. So when I met the first trans person, I started crying, and I went to her and I told her, I am like you. I didn't know that I could be like you, but you are you, and I am me, but I am like you. And this girl was like, bitch, what's wrong with you? What's happening here? and I was like, I am like you. And she's like, okay, you are like me. That's great. I'm working. This is the corner. You are being in the middle of my business. I need to make money. Get the fuck out of here. And I was like, but I need to talk to you. I need help, please. I wanna be like you. I want boobs. How do I get boobs? Boobs. Everything was boobs for me. I was like, boobs, boobs. I want boobs. Please let me have boobs. How do I get boobs? She was like, bitch, leave me the fuck alone. Go to that bar there, and I'll see you around 6 a.m. And around 6 a.m., she was nice. And she went and she's like, okay, I finished working. And what's up, bitch? And I was like, I am like you. And she's like, it's called trans. In Argentina, we use the word transvestite, and it's totally acceptable. In the United States, if you call a trans person transvestite, they may just slap you in the face. But in Argentina, trans people use the word transvestite very freely, and they're okay. So she's like, I'm a transvestite. And I was like, I'm a transvestite too. And she was like, girl, you look like shit. You need a lot of help. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. And she's like, okay, I'm going to help you. We're going to just get you on hormones. You definitely need a lot of help with your clothing. You need some help with your hair. So she started like making a plan for me. And she says like, you can also get surgeries in the future. And we talk and we talk. And, and she became what it is nowadays understood as my mother, I started creating a family of choice, and she became my mother, and she helped me a lot. And and she told me three things, and she said like, you are going to be a whore, you are going to get high, and you are going to die young. And at the time, that was the reality of a trans person, right? In the 80s in Argentina, that was the reality of a trans person. You could not have a job outside being a sex worker. So, and at the beginning, I thought like, oh, this does not apply to me. I'm too good to be a sex worker. I'm not gonna put any substances in my body because my body is a temple, and I am going to live forever. Little by little, I realized that she was right. When I started my transition, I could not get a job. So I became a sex worker. At the same time, I was experiencing all these fucking dudes that were fetishizing me, and they wanted to fuck me, and I needed to pay rent. So it was like, okay, you want to fuck me? I need to pay rent. I may just charge you and get, all together. And that's how, being a sex worker came to be a part of my identity. I'm saying this because I want to say, like, being trans was not something that came about in my life, that was created by a situation, that was created by a reality. It was being trans was a natural part of my identity. When I said that I'm a sex worker, it's not that came naturally with me as a person. My identity as a sex worker was created by a reality, right? So I had to do work in the sex trade because it was the only thing that I could do, because I was a trans person. So although being a sex worker is something that didn't come naturally, like my transness as part of my identity from birth, being a sex worker is an identity that is adjacent to my transness, because at the time, if you were trans, you could not get jobs outside the sex trade. I hope that makes sense. So and that's how I realized that, that she was right. And then, like, being a sex worker and being totally criminalized, and like, being like a victim of police abuse, like, in Argentina in the 80s, we already were in a democracy, but the mentality of like law enforcement was pretty much still closer to a dictatorship than to a democracy. And it has been a process that's still going on, where law enforcement has to learn that, they have limitations, that they can do whatever they want with people. So being a sex worker, you are pretty much in the bottom of the barrel. So I experienced a lot of oppression and a lot of violence from police officers. So I believe that police officers didn't give me drugs, but I think like one of the reasons because I started getting high was because it was a great way to deal with working in the streets with the oppression of police officers. So there you go. Second, number two, I was getting high, and I was always expecting that number three would come naturally. The life expectancy of a trans woman of color is between 32 and 35. And even I know now as a statistic, but when I was in my 20s, I didn't. And deep inside my mind, I knew that I would never be older than 35. And I always expect that, uh, not because she told me that I was gonna die young, it's because I also saw everybody around me. And when I started my transition, it was no older trans woman. They all died, at younger age, victims of violence, victims of like lack of healthcare, discrimination in the healthcare industry, or like terrible conditions. So because they live in extreme poverty. So I am 49 now, and I mean, I'm gonna go again. I am 49, and I know, incredible, right? I guess it's the Argentinian gene. So, Mai is going all the way with the surprise. Yes, they're like super surprised. I love it. You should be my best friend, Mai. So, and I never thought that I would live to this age. It was not something that I planned as a trans person. And of course I'm very lucky I am alive, but it comes with the whole discovery. I'm 49. I didn't do shit with my life because I never thought I would be old. I have no fucking savings. I never took care of my health because why? I'm gonna die young. So I'm just trying to catch up with all of that, right? And learning to have like healthy relationships and like a partner, and saving money and having jobs and shit. So it has been a process. So that with all this story, what I wanted to say is that some parts of I'm not going to say our, because I'm going to talk for myself. Some parts of my identity came from naturally from birth. They didn't become. They were, I was trans, right? And I was a woman, even if it was a secret or if it was a part that everybody knew, that was natural. For example, being a sex worker, that's something that came with a reality, right, of being trans. So I feel like somehow I absorbed that identity, but being a sex worker is a very important part of my identity because it shaped who I am as a person. Like, when after being a sex worker for 30 years, my life has been shaped by my profession. So, and so that's not something that came, with me from birth or, or naturally. That's something that I absorb as part of my reality as a trans person. Oh, but this whole thing has a happy ending. When I came to New York City, and when I met this other trans woman, I felt like, like I found my planet, that planet that I thought I belonged to. I thought that I found my planet, but it was a bigger revelation. When I came to New York City, I found more trans people, and I met this beautiful girl, crazy as fuck, but beautiful girl. Her name is Nina, and now she's one of my best friends. But when I met her in New York City, I totally fell in love with her, and that was such a fucking revelation because I always understood myself as a straight girl. You know, I was always for dick into boys. And all of a sudden, I am into this girl who is a post-op trans girl with a fucking vagina. And how is this gonna work? And I love her, and rediscovering sex with someone who has a vagina and is a, so it was like such a like, but I decided to just take it easy and go with it, and it's been fun. We are not together anymore. Not because any problems with me, it's just because of her, because she is crazy. Guys, I'm very difficult to be with. So, but she was like my first girlfriend, and I called my I called my mom that day and I said, "Mom, I'm in New York City and I am in love." And my mom, who came into terms with me being trans, uh, was so happy for me. And she said, "Who is he?" And I said, "Well, I think we should talk because it's not actually a he, it happens to be a she." And she's like, "Espérate un momento, wait a minute, what the fuck? You telling me that I had a son that was gay, became a woman, and now is a fucking lesbian?" And I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." And she says, "I think you do these things on purpose just to get me crazy." And whoop, I don't know. Are we still here? Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. My. I think the the Zoom couldn't take all that information though. And so I was like, yeah. And as I was telling her, I was also realizing that I was technically a lesbian, but I never choose to identify as one. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit lesbophobic. I don't know, and I have some internalized homophobia. I don't know. I don't know. I never really identify as lesbian. So since I know that I am a lesbian because I'm still attracted to women. I know that I'm a bisexual because I'm still attracted to two genders. And I'm still know that I'm a pansexual because I am attracted to any people regardless of gender. But during that time, I did not identify as a lesbian. Shame on me, though, because being a lesbian is super cool. But I didn't. I guess I chose not to because I didn't have enough information or even courage to do that. You know, I think like as a trans Latina, you know, we are, you know, you are, you know, when you understand your womanhood, you know, it comes that you're a woman, you have to have big boobs, a big ass, be blonde, and be a little bit stupid, and just love to fuck and take dick, right? That's what you are. You know, that's the understanding. Fuck that, right? But I'm just saying that's how that's how it's understood. So I think it was so hard for me to make myself create my space as a woman, as a Latina woman, where being a lesbian was not welcome that much, that when I realized that I was a lesbian, I was like, oh shit, I have to start all this fight again and explain to everybody that I'm a lesbian. So I kind of like skipped that one. I am at a point in my life now where oh yes, I'm a lesbian, yes, I'm bi, I'm pan, I'm just whatever, right? But it's part of our identities that sometimes we know, sometimes I know, I'm not gonna say we, I'm saying I know that I happen not to embrace that much. And that's okay. And, I guess like, I still have to talk this with my therapist, and I promise I will do it next week. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. What's up with me and my lesbianism? But I have to tell you that parts of my identity sometimes I have not been able to fully embrace, and it's a discovery. It's a discovery every day about who I am and how my identities create specific realities for me. So, with that, what I wanted to say, like, when it comes to identity, for me has been a discovery of like how sometimes part of my identity intersects and they create very specific realities, right? When I say that I'm a woman, right? I am a woman, but I'm also trans. So my reality as a woman is specifically crafted by my transness. So me and another cis woman, we're both women, but her reality may look totally different than mine because she's cis and because I'm trans. So yes, we do belong to an identity, a group that is defined by an identity, but that intersection of my transness and her cisness create totally different realities. Yes, we are part of the same identity, but we have total different ways of understanding that identity because they cross over with other specific identities like my transness and her cisness, right? So if this woman happens to be white, and I am a woman of color, our realities, we still are part of that group in terms of identity that is woman, but my identity with that intersection of my Latinx identity and my woman of color identity is different than hers, who is a white woman. We still belong to the same identity that involves us as women, but our identities have specific that cross over with womanhood and create different identities inside that identity. It's kind of like a circle inside of a bigger circle, right? I am a woman of color, but I'm very light skinned. So my reality as a trans woman of color is totally different than the reality of a Black trans woman, right? Because colorism is a fucking bitch. And like we live in a world where like the lighter you are, the most privilege that you have. And we have to grasp into that and do the best to change it, right? But my reality as a trans woman of color is different than the reality of a Black trans woman. Not for nothing, we are about to go into Trans Day of Remembrance in a couple of weeks. And like, I don't know in other countries, but in the States, in the United States, we have about 33 cases already of people who've been murdered because of their transness. And guess what? The big majority are Black trans women. So, when someone is killing a Black trans woman, it's not an act just of transphobia. It's an act of racism, and it's an act of misogyny, right? So then identity, as I can call a Black trans woman my sister and says that we are part of the same group, her reality because of her Blackness is totally different than mine as a Latinx light-skinned girl. So what I'm trying to say is that identity has to owe. I'm not going to give you directions. I'm going to say I look at identity always with intersectional lenses, right? So it is good and it is healthy sometimes to look at groups in terms of identity, but no group is homogeneous, right? No group has like, may have one identity that defines them as a group, but inside that group is the intersectionality that creates differences inside that group, that creates specificity around who they are in terms of how those different things like race, like age, like nationality, like sexual orientation, like gender identity, all those things intersect and create specific identities. So yes, we can talk as women, as an identity, and as a group who identify as women, but we as women are very different from each other because we all have different intersections in our identity as a woman that creates specificity around our lives, the lives that we live and the realities that we live. So I think I'm gonna stop here, and damn it, I can talk. So yeah, thank you. I think we have about 20 minutes for questions. If you have any questions, and I think that Shay was going to monitor those questions. And if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. Or I actually prefer if you just unmute yourself and ask me, that's fine too.
So right now in the chat, except of thousands comments saying like how much they love you, I don't see any questions yet.
Well, I take all the love. I'll take all the love. I take all the love. I'll take all the love. I love that you all love me.
So please just jump in and let's open it.
I have a question.
Hi, Pierre.
What's your perspective on like sorrow and grief and struggles in life?
Thank you. Wow, that's a really interesting question. As I said before, I grew up in a country in a dictatorship, like losing people and living around tragedy was normal, right? And that's the reality of living in a dictatorship. I grew up to live my life fully authentic as a woman who happens to be trans, and the reality of a trans person comes with a lot of violence and with a lot of terribleness. I always like to, I don't like to always just focus on the terribleness of being trans, because being trans is beautiful and it's a beautiful community and everything, but it fucking sucks sometimes, right? I took the train, last year and somebody punched me in the face because I was trans. So, so I learned to live with an idea of terribleness around me, and it's always like I'm losing a friend because of violence, I'm losing a friend because of a lack of healthcare, I'm losing a friend because of transphobia. So I think I do have a relationship with sorrow. I think sorrow and sadness sometimes is part of my life, and I have learned to live with it, and I have learned to embrace it because it is the healthiest thing that I can do. Because when I ignore my sorrow, when I ignore my sadness, then I do stupid shit like shooting heroin in my veins, So I have learned to embrace those feelings and to somebody once in recovery told me something that stayed with me, that is like, the only way out is through it, right? So I have embraced that forever. Every time I am in having feelings of sorrow, or I experience those kind of feelings, I embrace them, and I learn to live with them until they're either not there or they're not as important anymore. But thank you for that question. I love your hair, by the way.
There is a question from Camila. Did you grow up Catholic?
Oh my God, it's a beautiful Argentinian movie called Camila. It shaped my life. Look for it. It's this woman in the 1800s that falls in love with a priest, and they kill them both. Amazing. Sorry.
Wow. So did you grow up Catholic in Argentina? And if so, how do you reconcile your identities with Catholicism, past or present? Wow.
Super important question. I I have a tendency not to talk about religion or faith, because I am always in a verge of being disrespectful to it, and I don't want to offend anybody. But I do have a lot of issues, not with Catholicism, but with faith at all. It is a difficult conversation, because I am the one that is going to totally support you if you have a faith, and I want you to live your faith to the best of your ability, and I want you to lean on that faith if it helps you, and I want you to embrace your faith. And I also want to recognize that most of faiths think that I am a monster, think that I should not live, think that I am an abomination, think that my life should be shit. So it is putting those two things in the balance, my desire to support everybody's faith, and the fact that those faiths do not include me or see me as someone who is worth living or living my life as, is a very difficult situation to navigate, though. I grew up around people who were Catholic. My grandmother, who was my grandmother, the good grandmother, because I had a bad grandmother too. Someday I will tell you stories about her. She was terrible. But my good grandmother was a Baptist, and that she would read stories from the Bible to me. And she was like so cool. She was always told me like, I believe all this shit, but I know that it may not make sense. So I'm just gonna read it to you as a story. So she always read the Bible to me as a story. I think she knew that, I kind of navigate faith, in this case, the Baptist church, or the rest of my family who was Catholic, just as a way to belong, right? My whole school was going to Sunday school, to Catholic school, right? I never felt any inclination towards Catholicism, but shit, I was so queer. I didn't belong to any fucking groups. I was like, oh yeah, I believe in God too. So at least I could fit somewhere with something, though. But I am a person who is faithless, and I have no faith. And I have experienced Catholicism as a way to belong. I did all of that to belong to a group, but I do not identify with that. And I have lived with all that oppression, right? The oppression of that the Catholic Church can put on a queer person like me, you're a child. I was a child, and I chose to tell my priest that I was a girl. Imagine, right? Like the amount of prayer that I had to do. I don't know. I'm so old. I had to just go on my knees over like corn seeds, you know, and like until they encrust itself in my fucking knees, you know, and pray to be different. So Catholicism was such a traumatic experience to me. Um, uh, and I am also a survivor of sexual abuse as a child, not by a priest, but I was always like trying to reconcile, like, how do you have this wonderful God, and how, if he is there, is not seeing that this dude is fucking me and I'm 6, you know? So I had a very complicated relationship with faith, specifically with Catholicism, and at the same time, I always support and encourage anybody who has a faith to live it and embrace it, and have the best experience that they can have, because I know and I understand that for many people that is such a lifeline. It's not for me. I am an atheist. I am a hardcore atheist who believes that when we die, nothing happens. You're just rotten.
Wow. Wow. I'll just say what Camila was mentioning. So she was saying that she grew up Catholic in Chile, and that played a huge role in her not wanting to come to terms with her sexuality. And
They're burning churches in Chile, Mama. Están quemando las iglesias. It is like, you know, the history of Oh,
sorry, it's so noisy where I am. I just want to say, because I feel so rude just like writing, but I know, and it's chaos, and the separation of the state and the church should have been done such a long time ago. But I just want to say thank you so much for everything you're sharing, because it's such an inspiration, and I'm thrilled, really. Like, I could listen to you for hours.
Gracias, Camila.
De nada, cariño.
¿Viste una mujer maravillosa?
Sí, Daniela Vega.
I love her. So,
me too.
So, yeah, and you know, we have a pope in like that is Argentinian, for example, and it is a pope that pretty much put a blind eye to the dictatorship and to the fact that the dictators were killing thousands and thousands of people, and people learn to live with that. And if that's what they need, that's what they need. I can't live with that. It's hard for me, you know, when part of my family was persecuted by the dictatorship, you know, it's hard for me to come into terms with that. And at the same time, I do support anybody who's find help and find support in their faith. I am the first one that is gonna support you and encourage you to do that. It's not my case. I had a terrible relationship with faiths. I think that faiths are a big part of most of my problems. You know, most of my problems are because it is some kind of extreme person, an extremist in terms of faith, that thinks that I am not worth it, that, you know, create my reality in a way that makes it terrible. I didn't offend anybody with their faith.
Perhaps before we move to the next question, I would just ask a question about that. Do you feel, is there, in your opinion, a difference between hope and faith? And is faith is always religious?
You know, I have a Buddha in the back because I do yoga, and because I try to meditate, and because I think that from all the kind of like spirituality around here, Buddhism may be one of the ones that I could consider cool. All religions, all faiths are shit to women. That's why most of faiths are leaders are men. So I do have faith. I do have faith. I do have a faith. It's just not in a higher power. I do have faith in my community. I do have faith in all of you that are going to create a brighter future for everybody. I do have faith in myself. I do have faith in the person that I vote for. I do have faith in Black and brown leaders in their fight. So I do have faith. I just don't have faith in something that I can see or feel, or unfortunately continue to be unsure of its existence, like a higher power. That was part of my struggle with recovery, though. In recovery, you have to have a higher power. And people, they may say like, oh, a higher power can be this bottle of water. No, bitch, I know. When you talk about higher power, you talk about God. So don't tell me shit. So that was part of my problem with recovery too. So I do have faith, but I do have faith in people, and I do have faith in movements, and I do have faith in actual things that create change.
Thank you. Another question is from Jabu, and she asked, what does power mean to you?
I have a difficult relationship with power. I think power is something that I have always had to learn to understand, right? And not just the power that I have, but the power that other people or institutions or spaces have over me, right? When I think about power, I think about power dynamics, right? And how my reality is affected by the power dynamics of everybody that I come across to, right? How power looks like when I walk in the street and is a masculine being coming my way, right? And what is the power dynamic there? Do I feel intimidated by their masculinity? Do I feel intimidated by the whiteness, for example? Do I feel intimidated by their cisgender status, right? So, and that's pretty much identity. I think some identities come with specific powers, and it is important to understand the power that our identities have, and to understand the power that our identities may not have, right? And how to create power from an identity that is interpreted as lacking it, right? When we talk about women and men, it is an inherent power there that puts men in a position of having power. And, you know, as a woman, I have fucking worked all my life to create that power, right? And it is always, I feel like always men are in situations where they are in positions of power over me, but I always try to create whatever I can create to kind of like level and be in the same level when I talk to, when I in this case in terms of gender, when it comes to men. So power, I don't think a lot about power. I think a lot about power dynamics, and I think a lot about how I can create power for my identity to be as powerful as those identities that I don't share with other people. In this case, it's like men, cis, white, US citizens, like all the things that I'm not. How I can create power to level myself to those identities that I don't share with other people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I have another question, actually. Hearing your story and everything that you went through, I wonder, like, how is it? How are you doing it? Like, to actually always keep learning and always keep evolving as a human being, despite of struggles or despite of traumas or hardships that you went through?
My grandma, this amazing woman that I told you that was so supportive and who was the one that pretty much support my authentic self, and like without judging me or everything. She was a very poor indigenous Argentinian woman, whose family and tribe was murdered by colonizers, and like it was one of the last people in that tribe. And she was like she lacked everything, not because she didn't want it, she didn't do things, it's because they weren't there, right? So she could not have an education, she did not have money, she did not have a house, she did not have anything. She was a woman that had nothing, and build the leader that she had from nothing. So she always told me, because she knew who I am, and she knew, she saw me from the beginning. She always told me that it is power in knowledge, and she always told me, when I came out as gay at age 12, she told me, if you are going to live the life of a gay man at the time, know something, because you have to level all the shit that is going to come for you being gay with things that that they can give you power in this case, right? And the same thing when I came out as trans, she always thought that I should always keep myself learning as a way of having capital, because my identity as a trans person in this case would take a lot from my capital as a human being. So she always thought that I should kind of level with knowledge and learning. So it has been a consistent thing for me to learn other things and to learn about myself as a way to create capital for myself and create a better reality for myself.
Wow. Okay, perhaps I have another question, and it could be the last one. I wonder, what are you doing for your spiritual practice to keep yourself centered and grounded as you are?
Well, I meditate a lot. I do a lot of yoga and I exercise. I cook and eat all the delicious food that I make. I have a garden where I can get my own peppers and my own tomatoes and cook the food that I eat that comes from my garden, and that makes me very happy. And I have an amazing group of friends, and because of this current situation, sometimes I can't see them. We hang out via Zoom, or we meet in parks and with social distance. But community has been the most important part of my well-being, having people who are like me, who I feel that we are related, not because of blood, but because of our experiences and who we are and how we experience life, has been fundamental in my life, in a way of like creating my well-being. And I also have a lot of sex, and I recommend that to anybody who feels sexual.
Can I just begin with one last question?
Yes.
So the first one was about sorrow and grief, and the second one, I wonder what your perspective is on winning, like
Winning?
winning, yeah, in life, like.
That's the ultimate goal, you know, and that's the ultimate goal. And I will be the most happier woman when I feel like a winner, while I don't create any losers.
There is one question from NASA. Do we still have time for this question?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that question. I have to go.
Okay. So, as a trans woman of color, do you feel like you are obliged to be as some sort of a spokesperson for issues that affect those communities? And if so, how do you find the motivation to do so? Because I can imagine that sometimes you just want to live a normal life outside of activism, or maybe not.
I thank you for that question. That's such a great question. I feel like you know, remember when Caitlyn Jenner came out in the Vanity Fair thing, a magazine? Some fucking people stopped me in the street, people that I didn't know, and asked me, "Hi, did you see the Vanity Fair with Caitlyn Jenner?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't fucking know you. Who the fuck are you? Why the fuck are you talking to me? And what makes you feel that you can come and talk to me about fucking Caitlyn Jenner, who I can give 3 fucks?" So with that to say is that, you know, sometimes my identity becomes the only thing that people see about me, and it can be a little bit extenuating. You know, it's exhausting, you know, to be trans all the time for everybody. It's exhausting to be trans for myself all the time, but it's exhausting to be trans for other people. At the same time, I can't lie, because I make my living of being trans, right? About talking about my transness, talking about my community, talking about this. So I found a way to create wealth through my identity, so I can complain about just being trans as a part of my consistent narrative, because that is my job. But it's a lot of people that have to just face questions about their transness all the time, and they don't make $1 of it. So if you want to ask a person about their transness, ask them also for the Venmo or PayPal and send them some coins, you know.
Thank you so much. You just exude inspiration. I think you're the true definition of what inspiration is in human form. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you.
I also just want to say that you're so fucking amazing, and like now when your introduction, you did like showed us the post thing, and like the whole series done so much for the community, and like you're so inspiring, and I'm just like, oh, hands down, queen.
Thank you. As you know, when we were filming that scene, Janet Mock came and she's like, "Cecilia, I just realized something," and I was like, "What the fuck is it?" And she's like, "We are filming a trans story with 3 trans women of color. 2 of them are Black. And I, a Black trans woman, is directing it. And you are saying the words that were written by another trans woman. Isn't this fucking paradise?" And I was like, fuck yes, you know, we did this. So thank you for that. All right. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. I don't know what time is and where you are.
Thank you so much. It was very, very inspiring.
Thank you.
Cecilia, just right before you go, I'll just let you know that there is a request for having a story time with Cecilia. So perhaps you should consider it. There is a request for just like hearing you telling all these amazing stories.
That's what I do. I do a lot of storytelling. So follow me on Instagram at Cecilia Gentili 72. And I'm going to have a storytelling event where I'm going to tell some stories, and people who I think are the best storytellers in New York, in the United States, are going to tell stories too for me. It's going to be a fundraiser. So if you want to hear a story from me, just follow me on Instagram and you will see a big storytelling event coming. And I'm going to talk about a guy that fucked me in the bathroom and he had a Jesus Christ tattoo in his dick. Can't miss that. Okay, you all. Bye.
Bye, Cecilia. Thank you so much. Ciao, ciao. Wow, I hope you enjoyed that.
Incredible, so inspiring, and like the best storytelling I've heard in I don't know how long.
Yeah, wow. Cecilia is just incredible. So now the next session will be actually just at 3:30. So take your time until then. And right before you all leave, I'll just let you know that I updated the workbook a little, so there are some more information clarifications. So make sure to check it. And what else? Yeah, I think that's it for now. Enjoy your time. See you at 3:30. Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.